Have you ever heard of Oscar and Hart Toys, a name once known to everyone, the parents, girls and boys? Almost 200 years ago is when it had its start, by one Gerald Percy Oscar and Bartholomew Spencer Hart. Seated in a city where industry was rife, countless people all around to find a better life. This meant wealthy customers of business, state and royal, and all their bratty children they just can't help but spoil. New dolls with pretty dresses that the girls will sure desire, toy soldiers for those daring lads with artillery to fire. The store was just magnificent, like something from a story, decorated with great pomp for the world to see its glory. But those of lesser means could simply not afford to buy things of extravagance that their children so adored. A truly sad state of affairs, but what else can I tell? You can't just let the unwashed in to shop with better clientele. To Gerald and Bartholomew, this was really for the best. They had standards, reputation, as a cut above the rest. Yet imagine both their ire when word came to their door that a new toy shop had opened up and was selling to the poor. A wicked little enterprise had moved in on their turf and quickly gained a high esteem as being well above its worth. The toys here were fantastic, and for a price so low you'd scream. The shop so bright and colourful, like walking in a dream. Whose was the mind behind this place? Surely one knows who it be, but alas no name nor face turned up. This fellow was a mystery. This only added to his fame, and the people wanted more. The line outside would grow so big, it reached Oscar and Hart's store. Something just had to be done, and so they both gave their permission to do all that was necessary to be rid of competition. They sent in spies to gain intel and sabotage the shop, yet whatever plans they put in place only ended in a flop. A smear campaign was launched in which the press was well endorsed, but the people didn't pay much mind, so their hand had now been forced. They bribed a city councilman to find any cause he could, rats or rot, it mattered not, and shut it down for good. You know the thing with bureaucrats, whatever they say goes. I'm sad to say they got their way, and the shop, it had to close. Those foolish fiends thought all was well, that they'd not pay for their sins. And now, my friends, sit back, relax, for our story, it begins. 'Twas quite soon after the whole toy shop affair, when the whole festive season was already there. And upon Christmas Day, the events to unfold in Bartholomew's house as the night brought the cold. A sweet and young woman was in their employ as a live-in nanny for their own little boy. Billy was his name, and the nanny was called Eve. The two got on so well, she said, and this I do believe. Christmas Day had been great fun for all in the abode, though the staff awaited Boxing Day as out the door they strode. But Eve would stay the nights there and tuck Billy into bed. He'd been so good throughout the day, so he'd have a story read. As she went around the house to check nothing was amiss, a sudden knock struck at the door, and she jumped a bit at this. Who could this be round here so late? The thought ran through her mind, as she marched towards the home's front door, for the source she hoped to find. A sudden chill ran up her spine, it warned her of no good, as just beyond the glass she saw, a dark figure was now stood. She could not see it very well, as outside was so bleak, She called out from the other side, but the stranger did not speak. A few disturbing moments dragged on to her dismay. She had to see just who it was, and there was only one way. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Surprise took a hold by what she had saw. There was nobody there. On the step, in the street, only a present did rest at her feet. She picked up the box that was wrapped up so neat, where a small tag read Billy. The whole thing was sweet. Dear Mrs. Hall, who had followed the chill, found Eve at the door, standing quiet and still. She inquired to Eve if all was all right. Her eyes brightened up when the gift came to sight. The two shared a smile, though Eve had inquired who would leave a gift when all had retired. Mrs. Hall had a theory of a courier sent by friend or by kin, so to catch the event. Whatever the truth, the gift was for Billy, so they made for his room, not wanting to dilly. The young happy lad's eyes shone with delight, with one final gift before resting that night. He tore up the wrapping, and his smile grew wide when a jack-in-the-box was nestled inside. He wound up the handle, which gave rise to a tune of unusual sound that settled the room. After a moment there came a small pop, but on seeing the jack, their smiles did drop. The odd little figure had most of his face, save for his mouth, there wasn't a trace. The ladies went to reassure that he'd get a better toy, but Billy loved that little Jack and smiled with great joy. With this they were all happy, but there was still time for a tale. Eve chose a book from off the shelf, and from it she did regale. With all the gifts and games they played, and a feast still to digest, the boy was quick to tire out, and soon fell into rest. Mrs. Hall then kissed his head. Eve moved the box away. It would be there when he awoke, at the start of Boxing Day. Both moved towards the hallway, and slowly opened up the door, where further in another room, Mr. Hall did loudly snore. They bid each other a good night, and a Merry Christmas too, but little did the ladies know, their day was not yet through. Eve slept across from Billy. Nannies did this way back when, a constant presence to their wards. Times sure have changed since then. Silence soothed the grandiose home, in darkness it did keep, while the hearts and Eve as well were now all dreaming deep. Somewhere in her sleeping state, Eve's peace did quickly break, when a short and sudden popping sound did force her wide awake. Her eyes did dart from side to side, adjusting to the gloom. Soon enough she could make sense of what was in the room. But it wasn't so much what was there, that what had gone astray, as when she looked at Billy's bed, it seemed the lad was now away. Hopping out of bed herself, she took a closer look. The bed vacant, he was just gone. This could not be mistook. Before she could put on her gown to go search for little Bill, a noise did crawl into the room that briefly held her still. She knew this subtle rhythmic sound as it danced around her head. The wind-up toy from earlier was gone from next to Billy's bed. Had he snuck out so he could play? He'd not done this before. She had to find him quickly, in case his parents woke to more. But as she stepped out in the hall, so to begin her search, the music did fall silent, with a creepy sudden lurch. Unsure from where the music came, but felt it had been near, she'd check her current floor to start and whether it was clear. She looked from room to room, with no luck from the start. The only room she hadn't checked was of Mr. and Mrs. Hart. Making her way quietly along the hushed and chilly hall, she whispered out young Billy's name, but it bounced from wall to wall. Her heart grew more concerned. To their door she closer came, but stopped a ways away when seeing their doorframe. A dark and awful smear at the room's entrance was left, and a strange and pungent stench had poor Eve feeling bereft. Moving closer to the door, a nasty thought then came around. Her employers had not made a noise, no snores, nor breath or sound. Standing in the doorway, and against her better sense, she called out to the hearts in bed. The moment felt so tense. And when no answer did emerge, and no movement came to sight, Eve made a choice she would regret, and switched on the bedroom light. Horror struck the nanny through, as the room once purest white was now awash with bloody red, and the start of poor Eve's blight. Mr. and Mrs. Hart were still at rest in bed, and now they'd rest forevermore. They were truly slaughtered dead. Eve quickly shut the light off, as to spare herself this bane. Her hand she rose up to her mouth, to hold back her scream and pain. Fear and panic held her tight. Who could do this and how? Why would someone target them? And where was the killer now? Then what should come upon the air to catch her unawares, but the tune from Billy's winding toy, crawling up from down the stairs. The eerie call that came below, like a foreboding invitation. But Billy might still need her help, so pushed through her hesitation. Carefully down the stairs she stepped. She felt a smear along the rail. Her palm now dark, she wiped it off and descended without fail. Now on the ground floor did she look, led on by that horrid tune. Louder it did ring around. She hoped she'd find him soon. She passed on by the living room, for it didn't come from there, the study nor the kitchen too, but felt she knew just where. The doors into the dining room were closed up right before her. The sound it was much louder now, but she still had to confer. She drew open the doors, in hopes some better odds had grown, but the horror only deepened now, as the box did wind up on its own. She stared at the haunting children's toy. Alas, the tune came to a stop. Still and silence held the room. Then came that awful pop. The doll inside had changed. It now looked more tormenting, with a devil's smile on its face, from which a wicked laugh was venting. Eve turned around in hopes to leave, but stopped straight in her place, when but only a few steps away, she met Billy face to face. Not the sweet and little boy to which she'd grown affection. There was something wrong with this young lad, staring cold in her direction. From his mouth unto his feet, he stood there all a stain. A dark and bloody sight he was, Eve's sense would not regain. They stared blankly at each other, as quiet as the grave. Eve wanted to make sense of this, if there was some hope to save. When as she opened up her lips, so to say out his name, he leapt towards her through the air, in a ferocious scream he came. His jump, it wasn't human. He soared clear-cut through the air. Eve managed to drop out the way, and he missed her by a hair. She stood up and stepped backwards as Billy slammed hard on the table. It was large, he'd gone quite far, but he stood up and was stable. Eve could not believe her eyes, but knew she had to flee. She turned to run and just escape from this nightmare to be free. She ran on through the hallway until the front door was ahead, but crashing through the living room, Billy beat her there instead. She turned away and headed back as Billy leapt from wall to ceiling, chasing her with deadly cause. From this horror Eve was reeling. The doors and windows were all locked. She had no time to stray. A desperate thought then came to mind, that she could try to hide away. Up the servants' stairs she ran, with Billy close behind. But where to go, which room would do, as a hiding place to find? Her thoughts were all a rush, but then she felt she knew that the lavatory could lock her in, and that would have to do. So with great haste she made her way, until she finally arrived. She shut the door and bolted it, for now she had survived. But this may not last long, as Billy also was now here. He slammed himself against the door, which only fueled her fear. In a desperate last attempt, she hoped to block the entry with a heavy towel closet near that would for her stand sentry. She heaved and pushed the closet as Billy raged to get inside, but Eve continued ever on till her blockade was soon applied. The thumping just continued, and his scream would often call. He ran around to different rooms for just one way in at all. But no luck came to Billy, and much to his chagrin, there was no other way to her. Eve was safe within. She waited there for hours, just dwelling on her fate. Maybe help would come to her, but how long must she wait? Boxing Day would see no help, and perhaps Billy'd find a way to reach her while she rested here and kill her in the fray. What was going on here? How did this nightmare come about? The sadness, anger, and her pain now finally coming out. Then, without any certain cause, Bill fell silent and so still. Eve was worried what this meant when she felt a rising chill. The low and rhythmic footsteps, someone climbing to the landing, another victim for the boy who would be struck dead while standing. But then Billy started laughing, as if meeting with a friend. Eve was fearful this might mean her very messy end. From 3 loud thuds there came a knock upon the lavatory door, just like a gentle greeting, for her attention it implore. She didn't make a sound, though felt she had no choice. Then from the other side of things, there came a chilling voice. "Have you had a merry time?" The voice did slyly drift. "You get to live another day. How's that for a Christmas gift?" With that their conversation stopped, and the footsteps sounded on, getting further far away, until they were surely gone. But accompanied beside those steps, one other sound was strewn, all throughout this murder house, the Jack-in-the-Box's tune. The other staff would find Eve there, soon after Boxing Day, still locked inside the lavatory, sitting back and forth she sway. The law came to investigate, and she told them as she grieve of her frightening crazy story that most would not believe. However, this was special circumstance and not their only case, for a very alike crime had also taken place. It seemed poor Gerald Oscar had joined his friend again, in death the same as dear old Bart. God rest ye merry gentlemen. Beware the Merrymaker, his cruel and evil ploy. He'll take away the children with every twisted toy. Good day, I'm Jar19 and thank you for listening. So what did you think of Merrymaker 4? Well, Christmas is fast approaching, which means that Merrymaker will soon be here. Have you seen any signs of his impending arrival? Or perhaps you feel confident he won't visit you this year? As always, let me know if you spot him. Good to keep track of his movements whenever possible. What a smashing year it's been for the channel, as we're on our way to 500 subscribers. Thank you all so much for sticking with me. It means so very much to me, I really appreciate it. Here's wishing you a brilliant year ahead, filled with all the stuff non-disembodied life forms crave with their dirty savage yearnings. Cheers! I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then perhaps subscribe, leave a like, and if you're feeling particularly cheeky, maybe even a comment. I do hope that you'll join me again. Stay safe, sleep well, but remember, here we make monsters.